Forget February 2nd, it's time for Groundhog Date. Now, I'll be honest, I was a little bit worried going into 51st Dates because, well, we hadn't really heard much about the musical. Beyond the fact that it's loosely based on the film of the same name, we weren't really knowing what to expect. They haven't really released much material going into it. So really, for me, it could have gone either way. But coming out of the musical, I have to say, I was fairly pleasantly surprised. I think 51st Dates is a little bit imperfect, but for its flaws, it really makes up for it in its charm. So, what did I think of 51st Dates? Where are the areas that it needs to improve? And why, in parts, did it ultimately win me over? Let's find out. But if you haven't seen my face before, hi, I'm Ellie, I talk about theatre. I am the most chaotic theatre person on the internet. I do reviews, I do discussions, I do versus brackets, rankings, game shows, and so much more. And if any of that sounds interesting to you, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me, it helps out the channel. But let's dive into 51st Dates, the musical. 51st Dates follows loosely the plot of the film, with some slightly more modern updates and a lot of differences in how they approach the material. We follow Henry, played in this production by Josh St. Clair. He is a travel blogger and he's presented as a little bit of, well, a douchebag. He is presented as very charming, but in every single location he visits, he sleeps with different women and then eventually leaves them when he moves on to the next location. Until he visits Key Largo, Florida, and meets Lucy, played by Georgina Castle. Full of life and ambition, and Henry instantly forms a connection with her, a connection that this time he realises is real. But the next day, he goes to see her again and realises that she does not remember anything about the day before, which leads to Henry and Lucy repeating a first date over and over again. Now let's start with the book and the story of this musical, because I have a lot of opinions on it. I think this is one of the strongest elements of this musical, and the element that I think is massively doing the heavy lifting for this musical. It's not perfect, however, but it kind of leaves me in this really weird position as a critic. A position I don't think I've ever been in with a show before, where I have a lot of criticisms about the book here, and I have a lot of areas where this show needs to tighten things up, or needs to improve, or has things and motivations that don't quite line up. But I would be lying if I said that my opinion on the show was massively weighted down by these criticisms. Because what I think 51st Dates really has going for it right now is charm. And because of that, and because of how funny it is, and because of how well put together it is, and like a lot of the elements of the book that do work, I kind of have a lot more goodwill towards the areas of this musical where it needs the improvement. Musical theatre is an art form that takes years and years and years. It takes like 7, 8, upwards of like 9 years to fully develop a new musical. It takes so long, and that's why you have workshops, tryouts, so many different elements, just trying things out and seeing how it flows to an audience. And I think 51st Dates is a musical that is kind of in the right position of where it currently is. It's playing at the Other Palace in London, it's got an off-West End run, and I do think that the changes that this musical needs to make are extremely achievable. And when it does hit those, and when it does change a couple of things and tighten itself up, I think this is going to be something really special. So let's start first by exploring some of my criticisms towards this musical. First up, let's speak about some character intentions. I think one of the main things towards the start of this musical that feels like it's been left over from a previous draft is the character intention of Henry. As I mentioned, Henry at the start of the musical is presented as a little bit of a douchebag. He travels all around the world, and this opening number sets up the fact that he kind of goes to these different places, meets women, sleeps with them, and then promptly leaves and moves on to the next place. And that all changes when he meets Lucy. But I don't think the musical properly gives us the character journey from the Henry we see at the start of the musical to the Henry we see like 2 numbers later. Henry is barely awful for about like 10 minutes of this musical. It's strange to say the least. And I'm going to do a lot of comparisons to the Groundhog Day musical in this review, because I think they are similar musicals in the fact that they are quite repetitive in their structure. Whereas Groundhog Day is literally repeating the same day over and over again, this musical is instead repeating similar dates over and over again. But both musicals also start out with a protagonist who isn't really the nicest person in the world. But whereas Groundhog Day kind of takes you through his journey and really slow burns it throughout the entire musical, Henry just kind of repents immediately. Not even that, they don't even really solve it. They just kind of throw out what they set up out the window immediately. There's not really a point where we see the transition from Henry at the start to Henry pining after Lucy. And it gets to a point where I kind of have to ask, what was the point of that introduction of this character if we're not going to see the journey and if we're going to change what Henry is like very, very quickly? This is what I mean when I say I think it's something that might be left over from an earlier draft, or even something that they've lifted more from the film. Because it's so fast into his change that, honestly, it feels like until we see Henry literally go up for a second date, that Lucy is going to be next in line of women that Henry has used just to learn about the town or get something out of them, and is going to move on swiftly afterwards. So it's very jarring when we don't really get any real explanation of why that's not happening again. Why are we setting up a pattern of behaviour not to highlight the shift in that behaviour? I think this is something very easily fixed in 2 different ways. Number 1, just give us an explanation. A moment, an additional song where Henry shows that growth and properly changes. Or, probably an even simpler change, just don't present him as awfully in that opening number. It's such a large hurdle to jump over that the question becomes, why do we need it there if it's not going to take up more than like 5-10 minutes of the musical? But in the moment, I don't really mind that too much, because, as I said, it only takes up about 5-10 minutes of the musical. It's a bit weird right then and there, but because the majority of the runtime is the new version of Henry, then, you know, it doesn't really affect the musical too much as a whole. And this is kind of the pattern I'm going to fall into throughout a lot of this review, where I'm laying out some of these criticisms and going, yes, I do feel like this needs to be fixed, and I do feel like this is quite an easy thing to tighten, but it doesn't destroy the whole musical for me, because I don't mind it too much, or it gets on to the better things quite quickly, so I didn't really think about it too much throughout the entire thing. So I said, it leaves me in a really weird position as a critic where I'm going, yes, please fix this, but also, I don't want to bring a piece of theatre down when my criticisms didn't really make me hate the show. I can't sit here and pretend that it massively bothered me. But these are more just the little things that you need to tighten up as you're continuing to develop a show. We see this practically doomed romance start to blossom, and there's a lot of great chemistry here. And I think this musical does a really good job at balancing the romantic side of it, and the joy and the laughter and the chemistry between the pair, and the real weight of the tragedy of this. This storyline and this condition that Lucy has, where she forgets her short-term memory very, very quickly, is something that could be very easily brushed over. But I do think this musical does a really good job at actually showing how much this affects not just, like, Lucy's immediate family, but the whole community here in Key Largo. Is it a little bit hard to believe that the entire town of people would all band together to repeat the same day over and over again to help this girl feel normal. Yes, a little bit. But at the same time, I do think that the townsfolk and the way that they present it and the songs that they give and the material they give to these people makes you believe it. You see Lucy's real effect on the people around her. You see how much love and care there is within this community, and because the community is so small, you can also get over that little hurdle there. And ultimately, it's really, really sweet. This girl who, is struggling through this condition and seeing a world in which everyone around her acclimatizes towards her and changes how they handle their day-to-day life so they can just make this one person there a valid and real and loved member of their community feel normal. And you also feel the weight of the tragedy that Henry feels in this position. Finally, he does have someone that he feels he can open up to and really, really likes. And she forgets every single day. And the more and more they progress this relationship and the more and more they build and it goes through the cycle, you feel the weight that has on Henry as well. It deals with the bad days that Lucy has when, they can't keep up the facade too long. The ups and downs and the choices that they made and how they can readjust how they handle this to make it feel better for Lucy. Acknowledging the hardships of the position that she's in, but not having to lie to her throughout that. There's a lot of real ups and downs and a lot of real humanity within this. Ultimately, it tackles this situation with a lot of heart. It doesn't feel too much like a fantasy. It doesn't feel like it's making up this position. It deals with a lot of the real-world consequences of all the decisions of the characters within this musical. And it gives a hell of a lot of weight to it. A lot more than you would expect in something that is presented as quite a fluffy rom-com. Everything here, plot-wise, is so deeply rooted into the emotion and the heart and this general vibe of the piece. So when you kind of look at this situation and when you look at the finer details and their decisions and the real implications of it, you can kind of forgive it more because what you need to feel as an audience member is there. Yes, there are days that they don't show, and I'm trying to be as spoiler-free as I can be with discussing this, but there are some things that Lucy goes through where you're like, and if you think about it afterwards, you go, oh, Lucy had to go through that, and she would have had to wake up every day and see that, and not realise what is going on. And when you reframe it a little bit in your mind, when you change the perspective that you're viewing this musical through, it could start to look a bit like a horror movie. It's almost like psychological body horror in elements. Like, there's a lot of days that this musical can't show just because of how horrifying it would be. In the words of the musical, The Guy Who Didn't Like Musicals, think of the implications. But if you don't think about that and you're watching it in the moment, you're like, oh, cute. Lucy and Henry, they managed to work out things and they find a way to get around this situation and they tried to acclimatise for it. There's certain decisions that the show decides to go through that they probably could not do, and it would probably alleviate a little bit of this post-show realization, the post-show clarity of some of the more horrific implications of this situation and of this solution that they eventually find. But I've spoken a lot about the charm of this musical and that in terms of the negatives, but something that I do think is so strong about this musical is the comedy and the sharpness of the wit of the book. Oh my god, this is one of the funniest new musicals I've seen in a while. Dare I say next to Shocked, maybe? one of the funniest musicals this year. It kind of took me out of left field how funny this book is. And it has a lot of these moments where it kind of pulls the rug out from under you comedically, throwing in a joke here and there that really, really land. A lot of it being just because of how charming these characters are and how well they build up this ensemble. Again, another Groundhog Day comparison, just like that musical manages to do. I don't want to spoil the jokes because I want people to go into this musical, like me, not expecting these jokes and to be knocked out from the side of it, but they have a really good range. They have certain very comedic characters who come in and they're extremely over the top and scene stealing, and I'll speak about her. Her. My favourite part of this musical. When we get to the performances later. But on the other side, they have these quick, sharp one-liners that come in as well. So there's a real nice balance between the comedy and the show. But I think on the whole, yes, there is definitely areas that they need to tighten up with this book. Some of the character intentions, some of the implications, a little bit of structure here and there. But with those said, this musical has what it needs. There's a lot of new musical books that you go and see and you're like, there's a lot of problems here and there's a lot of issues here. And you need to fix this, and this. But this one feels like it comes with a but with that. Where the main thing this musical needs to have, that heart, that soul, it's there. It's already there. It's just these tiny little things that it needs to adjust. The bulk of the work is done. Now, with all that said, I do think for me personally, the book is the thing that was doing the heavy lifting in this musical. With how it presents story, with how charming it is. Because the score, let's just say, like Lucy, I will be forgetting it the next day. I don't think it's bad. I don't think there's any material in here that I remember for any massively negative reasons. But I do think it's missing quite a few things. There are some nice moments here and there. I really do enjoy the song where we get a deeper reflection of this community on Lucy's condition, explaining from their perspective why they repeat the same day over and over again, really getting to the heart of why they would go so far for this one person and why she means so much to these people. It's a little overly long, I feel, but it's very effective emotionally. There's also this really lovely Welcome to Key Largo song that is sung by Sandy, played here by Chad St. Louis, where they showcase the joys of this Floridian town. It's this really fun, upbeat number. It's camp. It's camp, and I like a bit of camp. But beyond those, I struggle to really recall many melodies that this show presented. I also think sometimes lyrically, it can be a little bit tone deaf. I think a great example of this is a song where they're explaining to Lucy what happened, and there is a sung lyric that is quite literally, "You swerved into that tree," comes out of left field quite a bit. I think this musical has quite a few lyrical moments like that. And ultimately, I do think that this score is part of the reason why they haven't really released much from this musical prior to this run, because there isn't really much material that works outside the show. There isn't really much material within it that isn't, like, kind of spoilery. And I don't think there is, like, that song. You know when you think of a musical and you're like, that is the big number. The number that everyone goes out singing. A Defying Gravity. You'll Be Found from Dear Evan Hansen, or Waving for a Window even. Almost every musical you can point to, like, the big song. Either, like, a big, powerful ballad, a catchy moment, just something within there that you're like, yes, that's what sums up this musical. I'm not sure this one has that within the score. I do think this is the harder element of the musical to tighten up for a future production, but I don't think this score is a million miles away from doing what it needs to do. Even if they can just build in some stronger motifs and give us that one showstopper number. Now, this musical, as I mentioned, is playing at the Other Palace in London, a famously small theatre. And that's why I was really intrigued when they announced that Casey Nicholaw would be directing and choreographing, Because Casey is very much known for these big, flashy Broadway musicals. Book of Mormon, Mean Girls, you know the type of style he goes for. He is a very strong choreographer. He's a great director for these big commercial productions that have a lot of space on stage and can give you a lot of spectacle. But the other Palace stage isn't really the best for that. So I was a little bit confused because if anyone can dynamically stage a show, it's him. But will he be able to do that on such a small stage? And then we saw the set, which made a small stage even smaller. And I'll speak about my thoughts on the set in a minute, but I will say, on the whole, I do like Casey Nichola's direction here. And his choreography has moments, but it does feel very, very squashed. It does feel like they want a slightly bigger stage for this show. There's some nice sequences in here where we do get some group choreography and some ensemble numbers, but it does feel like it is massively limited on the scale and the spectacle because they just simply don't have the space. A song like Welcome to Key Largo feels like it is classic Casey Nichola material. Right in line with something like Turn It Off in the Book of Mormon. But there's not the space for it. And it's even harder when you've got that giant central structure that means you've got even less space. I like his work here, but it does feel like he's being massively limited on what he can do. When you tell me Casey Nichola is directing, I want some more flashy dance sequences, please. But despite the problems with the set, I do actually like the idea behind it. This central structure turns round and doubles for a couple of different locations throughout the show. Becoming a front porch for Lucy's house, turning round to become the restaurant and bedrooms in different places. They're able to be quite flexible with it. And side panels kind of tuck out to create a more fulfilled and full space on stage. But admittedly, it is a little bit of a shame how much this set does rely on projections. I like parts of the projection design. I think it works better when it's on the main back wall and kind of just background details. But I will admit, some of the artwork that we see throughout the show is a little bit uncanny, especially the portrait gallery we see of Henry. I don't want to claim AI, but it did look like a lot of these artworks were just Josh St. Clair put through a Snapchat or a TikTok filter that makes you look like a painting. But on the whole, I do think this set would work a little bit better on a slightly bigger stage. But what's here and the main ideas behind it, I do genuinely like. And finally, let's speak about this cast, because, delightful. Delightful. Josh St. Clair as Henry, great. Putting aside the weird shift in the character that he has, I do think Josh St. Clair plays both sides of Henry quite well. He has great chemistry with Georgina Castle. He's really likeable. I think he portrays a lot of the real and genuine emotion and confusion and the push and pull he feels between Lucy and the work life that's calling him very, very well to make him more of a grounded character. Georgina Castle has done a full 180 from her previous role as Regina George in Mean Girls. And side note, if I had a penny for every single time Georgina Castle starred in a Casey Nichola directed show where she specifically told someone that they can sit with her, I would have 2 pennies, which isn't a lot, but it's weird it happened twice. Jokes aside, Lucy is the sweetest girl on the planet. And Georgina does a great job at still making her feel realistic. Her relationship with her family, her relationship with Henry, and the weight that she gives to the realizations, oh my god, it is heartbreaking to watch. You really, really feel it through Castle's performance here. And I must say, we have an absolutely stunning supporting cast here. I'm going to start with my 2 favourites. My 2 divas. My 2 absolute divas. Let's start with Chad St. Louis, because, oh boy, I saw this performer in Crybaby a couple of months ago, and I knew when this casting announcement dropped, I was like, oh, I'm expecting vocals. And yes, we got vocals, but we also got a really delightful little portrayal. So captivating, so fun, they're so lovable. I'm obsessed with this performer, and you should be too. I love them. I love them so much. And speaking of divas I love so much, Natasha O'Brien as Delia? Oh my god, I'm obsessed. So, Delia is this agent. She is Henry's agent. And she kind of just pops in every now and again as like a reminder of the life that Henry is kind of ditching and leaving behind. Like this connection to this work life that we've been seeing in the background throughout the whole musical. She isn't really the most important role in the entire show, but oh my god, she is important to me. Because I don't think I've seen a performer commit so hard like Natasha does here. Oh my lord. She saw the assignment of this character and just fully went with it. Not only getting an A star, but saying I'm getting extra credit as well. She chews the scenery every time she's on. She's got this like panicked look behind her smile in every single scene she's in. It is so good. It is so good. Every single time that she walked onto that stage, you could hear the audience get excited. And there's like one moment in the show where the same actress plays a different role and literally got a different audience response because of how well she played that first role. I cannot say how much I love this performance. It is so good. It's so good. It's so funny. We also have Lucy's family, her dad, Marlin, played by John Marquez, and her brother, Doug, played by Charlie Toland. There's a lot of really fun dynamics that set up between the relationship, between like the four here, between Henry, Lucy, Marlin, and Doug. There's a real consensus between them, how much they love and care for Lucy. There's a lot of really challenging moments of conflict and tension between these characters. Marquez is kind of a really lovely contrast in this musical. Such a grounded voice. And this dynamic that's really pulled off well by Marquez. And Toland takes on Doug really well, almost feeling a little bit younger and playing a little bit younger than he actually is, to kind of make Lucy still feel normal and still feel like that relationship is exactly the same every single day. There's some real vocal standouts from Aisha Naomi Pease, who plays Ukulele Sue, who gets a lot of the really strong ballad moments and has a great relationship and dynamic with her partner in the show, Marco, played by Ricky Rojas. I can't roll an R. This is why I can never learn Spanish. I can't roll my R's. This pair run this diner, have a lot of great conflict and dynamic with Henry as well. And honestly, this whole ensemble are so lovely. You really feel how they warm to Henry and how this relationship all builds between them. You feel the love and the care between this whole community. Great performances all around. 50 First Dates has something about it, I have to admit. Its book, while flawed, has everything it needs. The heart, the emotion, the intensity, the weight. If cynical old me can forgive some of the flaws of this book, then I'm sure a lot of big rom-com fans will have no problem with it either. If they can just tighten up that score and some of these elements here and there, I do feel like these will be 50 First Dates to remember. But what do you think? Have you seen 50 First Dates? What did you think? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. If you did enjoy this video, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me, it helps out the channel. Here's some links to some other videos on screen right now and a link to my Instagram if you'd like to give me a follow over there. I also have other social links and a merch store in the description down below. But that's it for me today, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Bye!